America has a prison problem. I know, you don't care how many criminals we lock up, but you pay for it, and it ain't cheap. North Dakota officials know that, so they are trying Norway's method of incarceration, which they call restorative justice. Prisoners are not locked up in jail cells, but in hotel-like rooms. The men you're about to see are serving serious time for serious crimes, even murder. But good behavior got them into this medium security prison in North Dakota.
Man, we got puppies and ice cream and flowers, bro. It blows my mind.
By giving us this cultured approach, allowing us to learn and have other programs to do, it gives us a sense that, okay, well, maybe we're not stuck in this little box over here as convict.
It's nice to have a real shower with a real shower head and adjustable shower spray, you know, and makes you feel a little more normal. They treat me decent. They treat me like a person. I'm not going to disrespect you because you don't disrespect me.
If you had a loved one murdered, would you want the killer? Would you want them to have a life inside prison that looked like this? Or is this too nice?
I would want them to be able to live their life as best as they could in prison. Because regardless, you still have the stress of being in prison. You still have the stress of losing your family and being separated from family.
What would you tell people who look at this, look at the big screen TVs and the nice comfortable bed? What would you tell the critics?
That not all of us are bad people in here, and if we follow the rules and we're trying to make ourselves better people and we work towards it, that we should be rewarded a little bit.
Let's talk about this. John Osmond is a former director of the South Carolina Department of Corrections, and Larry Levine is a former federal prison inmate and the founder of Wall Street Prison Consultants. Welcome to both of you. Larry, I'll start with you. So you were in prison. What if your jail cell looked like that?
Well, my first look at it is, why leave? You can get educational programs while you're there. It's all paid for by the state. When I was in a federal prison in Taft, California, it was a private prison. It was actually very nice. And I used to say, if I could get a bottle of booze, a cell phone, and a couple of women, why leave here? I could stay here forever. That is not your typical prison. And I think that program is the inmates maybe take advantage of the programs there. They'll start trying to game the system. That'll get phased out in the United States.
Do you think that's true, John? Do you think it's an experiment that's going to fail?
I don't think it's an experiment that's necessarily going to fail. I think you'll see, I think you're seeing right now across the country a lot of different states trying a lot of different things. And one of the things that we're learning is that if you take hope away from people, they behave like men without hope. So bringing good programming, bringing more incentive back into our prison system. I mean, clearly the truth in sentencing 85% experiment of the past has failed. We know it's driven up recidivism. We know it's turning more dangerous people back into society. And so learning how to balance consequence and punishment with rehabilitation and incentive is really what North Dakota's doing. You know, not many states could afford to do it to that extreme, but in the end, if it creates safer inmates re-entering society, better prepared and to re-enter society, and changed people entering society, seems to me it's probably worth it.
So Larry is nodding at that. So what's wrong with treating somebody who's convicted of a drug crime, let's say,
there's nothing
like a person?
There's nothing wrong with it. When the inmates have hope, they have something to look forward to. It gives them a future. It gives them something to drive for, something to strive for. And if the staff treats the inmates with respect, the inmates in turn will treat the staff back with respect. The staff sets the tone in a prison. One of the prisons I was at, a federal prison in Lompoc, California, when the warden was there, everybody knew. They saw his vehicle outside the fence. It set the tone. The staff hated him. In turn, their attitude changed to the inmates. There was just a lot of tension. When he wasn't there, everybody was happy. The staff was happy. The inmates were happy. But in a setting like this, it kind of reintegrates the inmates back into society. That's more of a halfway house type setting for somebody that's in custody.
Yeah, but one of the guys, John, that was interviewed for that story in North Dakota was a convicted killer. He's serving 17 years for murder, and he's staying in this hotel-like room. Is it just a matter of degree? Because in North Dakota, like, they have puppies. Really?
Well, they have that.
Well, most prison systems have dogs these days. Most prisons have dog programs, puppies run around. Almost any medium or maximum prison that you'll see, you'll have some type of dog training program, dog reentry program, dog rescue program. So that's really not that unusual. I will agree, most Americans will look at this setting, at the physical plant, and say, hey, this is a little bit too far. But in the end, if it makes the prison safer, if it creates a better prepared citizen re-entering society, and then thereby make society safer. Again, you know, I'm at the age in my life where I want us to do what works. And if this works, and if a state can afford to do this, then we ought to pursue what works. And what we know doesn't work is taking away hope. The truth in sentencing nonsense of the 80s and 90s has really, in my opinion, in the opinion of many, has crippled the federal prison system. It's crippled the states where it's implemented, including my state. And literally, we're putting people back on the street who are more dangerous than they were when they came in prison, again, because if you treat human beings, if you take away hope from human beings, they act like, they behave like people with no hope,
well,
and it makes everybody less safe.
Here's the thing, Larry. So this experiment's going on in North Dakota right now, but the Trump administration, they want to come down hard on especially people who deal drugs. Treat them like murderers because the drugs they sell kill people. Mr. Trump has suggested the death penalty for those people. He suggested that due process isn't always a good thing. So it's completely the opposite. So which way is better? Is it coming down hard on people who committed crimes or
in the
not?
federal system, you have high security, medium, low, then you have the minimum security camps. So what they're doing is they're taking people based on their custody and security level, their history, the amount of time they have to serve, and they're placing them, I guess, in the right prison based on all that criteria. Now, this guy in North Dakota who's a murderer, he would have a public safety factor in the federal system. He would be at a medium at least, perhaps a high, a U.S. penitentiary. So you have to create a balance. I mean, I saw when I was at Lompoc, the Watergate the Watergate people were there in the 70s. They actually had a little cottage, just like they have in Norway. They're trying to do in North Dakota. They had a special area set aside for these people. I suppose when all these Trump officials get convicted, if they are, maybe they'll build special little cottages for them, give them special treatment.
Larry. Those are white-collar criminals, right?
Well, they are.
So they're
minimum security.
Minimum security, right? So, John, last question for you, and I'll ask you that very same question, because the Trump administration does want to come down hard on people who break the law. They say that is a deterrent, right? If they think that the death penalty is on the table for them, they won't commit the crime. In your mind, is it better to be as tough as possible on all kinds of criminals, or are there levels of, I don't know, toughness?
Well, you've got to have a lot of tools in your tool bag. I mean, obviously, the setting that we're looking at in South Dakota and in Norway, that's not the setting for every, ultra-violent, hyper-violent gang member that are gang members that are filling up prisons in my state and in the federal prison system. Those guys are going to have to stay behind fences and behind bars. I believe the medium security custody inmate, I believe the inmate who committed murder in North Dakota, who's earned his way up to a better setting, is still in a medium custody prison, which means he's behind one or two fences and he's still safe in case something were to go wrong. But you just need a breadth and depth of programming and environments to make sure that we're smart, that we're not just tough on crime, but that we're also smart in recognizing that most of these people, 96% of those 2 million locked up, are coming back into society. And the reason for that is, in large part, we simply can't afford to lock them up for the rest of their lives. We can barely afford what we're spending on corrections now in this country. So I don't see the Trump administration's, wanting to prosecute violent drug offenders as contradicting this approach in North Dakota. I think they all work together. Again, in North Dakota and Norway both, those inmates have earned their way up into that setting by conforming their behavior to societal standards, which is exactly what landed them. Their inability to do that is exactly what landed them in prison to begin with. So we should reward them when they finally decide, hey, I am going to change my behavior. It's time to make a change.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, and thanks to both of you, John Osment, Larry Levine. Appreciate it.
Certainly.